So this video is going to be about friction, and friction is a force, and it's very important in our everyday life. We couldn't do much without friction. We need it to walk. It's how our feet keep from sliding all over whatever we're walking on. Same thing with car wheels. Cars would slide all over the street without friction. We couldn't sit without it, we'd slide out of our seat, and we couldn't hold books, they slide out of our hands. So friction is a force that we get whenever two surfaces oppose each other. That means one's rubbing or touching the other one. These two surfaces have a force, which we call friction between them. If you rub your hands together, they get warm. That's because this force of friction. Give you a second to do that. So you're making friction. There are 4 different kinds of friction we're going to talk about. Static friction, sliding friction, which is sometimes known as kinetic friction, rolling friction, or fluid friction. Static friction. Static friction is what acts on something that's not moving. Okay, so anything that's not moving, like a piano held in place, is static friction. That's what keeps you in your seat. Some of you, kinetic friction keeps you in your seat because you wiggle all over your seat. And no heat or wear is generated. Things are not moving, which is what static means. Static means not moving. Sliding or kinetic friction is when you're pulling or pushing an object and it's hard to move, like on moving day, pushing a box or anything else across the floor. And this does wear things out, and you do get heat. So when you were rubbing your hands together a minute ago, that was sliding or kinetic friction. Rolling friction is when you have something that's rolling, like ball bearings or wheels, and it reduces the contact, so you're not touching as much of the ground, so there's not as much friction. Carts, anything. So with wheels you don't get as much wear and it's easier to pull. It's going to be a smaller force if you have wheels. Fluid friction is anytime something is moving through a fluid, such as water, like a swimmer, but also when things are moving through the air. So air resistance is a kind of fluid friction. Other examples are when you're cooking, stirring the batter, walking or swimming through water, and bike riders get that with the air. They get that air resistance that can slow you down, especially on a windy day. Mu. Mu is what we call the coefficient of friction. Mu is going to be different depending on the two surfaces involved. And we have some typical values of mu depending on what it is. The harder it is to move things, like the rubber on dry pavement, the bigger mu is. The slipperier something is, like skis or snowboarding, Mrs. Murray's favorite on the snow, the smaller mu is. So I have a little question for you. Name 2 sports where friction is helpful and needed to explain. And then name 2 sports where friction is it's better to not have friction. Think ice hockey, swimming, bicycle riding, ice skating. For number 2, where friction is reduced for better performance. Okay, so there are ways you can reduce friction. A smooth surface doesn't demonstrate as much friction as a rough surface. And lubricants, such as the oil we put in our car. Okay, and this is a big, a lot of money and science are spent on trying to reduce friction, because the less friction you have in your car, the longer the parts last, and most importantly, the better gas mileage you get. Less friction means more energy gets spent for moving and less gets spent for rubbing parts together.